Charles Barkley just told Draymond Green the Warriors' championship window is closed, and things got heated fast. What started as a basketball debate turned personal when Green pushed back. So what exactly happened between the two NBA legends, and why did Barkley refuse to back down? Watch as I break down the clash. It started as a normal Wednesday night on Inside the NBA. Draymond Green was sitting in for Shaquille O'Neal, next to Kenny Smith, Ernie Johnson, and Charles Barkley. The topic on the table, the Golden State Warriors, fresh off missing the playoffs, and what's left of their championship window. Barkley didn't soften anything. It's over for the Warriors. No disrespect. It ends for every old team, Barkley said. You had your run. You get old. Y'all let Klay Thompson go. You and Steph Curry are on the backside of your careers. It just passed you by. Y'all had one of the greatest runs ever. You're not in the playoffs. Then he kept going. You think you're going to get healthier for next year? You're just going to get older. He wasn't done. That's no disrespect. Y'all had one of the greatest runs of all time. If you want to compete, you're going to have to leave there. If Steph wants to compete, he's going to have to leave there. Barkley was telling Draymond on air in front of millions that the dynasty he built his whole identity around was finished, and that saving his own career might mean packing up and leaving the only franchise he's ever known. Draymond didn't fire back with numbers or stats. His response didn't need many words. Instead, he referenced a moment that perfectly painted the picture for Golden State's future. He said he didn't know what was coming next for the Warriors, but that he loved his guys to death. It was almost a concession. For a second, it looked like Draymond Green, a guy who never lets a comment slide, was just going to take it. Then came the line that changed the whole night. Barkley had brought up Steve Kerr hugging Green and Curry after their final game, using it as proof that the run was ending. He tacked on one more dig, saying sports are for young people. Nobody wins when they're 37, 38. And that's when Draymond stopped being gracious. The 36-year-old Warriors star clapped back at Chuck by saying, "I think the goal is to not look like you in a Houston Rockets uniform." Kenny Smith jumped in immediately, asking Green to clarify what he meant by that. Kenny Smith intervened by asking Green for further explanation for his comment. "Did you see it?" "I saw it," he responded. The room went quiet. On air in real time, you could feel it land wrong. The joke fell flat, and there was a bit of an awkward silence once he made the comment. Green had just told a Hall of Famer, an 11-time All-Star, a former MVP, that he didn't want to end up looking the way Barkley looked in his final years as a pro. On the same desk they share every night, in front of the same audience that's watched Barkley needle everybody, from Shaq to entire cities for 2 decades. Barkley, for his part, laughed it off in the moment. But that's not where this ended. This is where it started, because Draymond Green picking a fight about aging and decline with Charles Barkley was always going to invite a scoreboard check. Many online believed Green was being disrespectful towards the Hall of Famer and began a stats comparison. Barkley joined the Houston Rockets in 1996 at age 33. He averaged 16.5 points, 12.2 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and a 4.0 box plus-minus throughout his 4 years with the team. That's not decline. That's a guy still playing at an all-star level into his mid-30s. The backlash didn't wait. NBA media personalities piled on almost immediately. Nick Wright called the moment awful, awkward TV and said it was just ahistorical, pointing out that Barkley averaged 16 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists across his 4 years in Houston, including an 18-12 stretch during a run to the Western Conference Finals. Wright didn't hold back on Green either, accusing him of rewriting history in real time. And this is the part that matters for what came next. Draymond Green had thrown a shot at a legend's legacy, live on national television. Charles Barkley, a guy famous for never letting a moment like that pass, had a choice to make. He could laugh it off forever, or he could wait for his moment and make sure Draymond Green understood exactly where he stood. He chose the second option, and when it came, it wasn't just a comeback. It was a full accounting of who's actually in what tier of NBA history, delivered calmly, deliberately, and without a single word wasted. That's where the real reality check began. Barkley didn't respond right away. That's important. He let the clip go viral first. He let the takes pile up. Let Green get roasted across every NBA platform for 2 straight days. And only then did he step in front of a microphone. Speaking to Dan Bickley and Vince Marotta on Arizona Sports 98.7 FM, Charles Barkley dropped the hammer on his beef with Draymond Green. Barkley said what many fans are saying online regarding their playing careers. His opening line set the tone for everything that followed. "I never punch down," Barkley said. "Draymond's a good player, but we're not on the same level. So I can hear, but I don't have to respond to every time somebody says something about me. He's a really good player. He's had a hell of a career, but we're not on the same level. Read that again. Barkley wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling. He was doing something far more surgical. He was placing Draymond in a category politely and closing the door on the argument before it even started. You don't get mad at somebody you consider below you. You just tell them where they stand. He didn't stop there either. A few days later on the Dan Patrick Show, Barkley went even further. And this time the target wasn't just Draymond. It was the entire Warriors franchise. They are just going to get older, Barkley said. It's over for Golden State. They had a great run. He took a personal shot at me, but I'm not sensitive. It's been over in Golden State. If Golden State was relevant, he wouldn't be in the studio with me. Think about what that line is actually doing. Barkley is saying, the only reason Draymond Green is sitting behind that desk critiquing basketball, instead of playing it in the postseason, is because his team is irrelevant enough that he has time to do television. That's not just a comment about age. That's Barkley using Draymond's own new career as a TV analyst as evidence of the very decline Draymond tried to deny. And then Barkley pulled out the names that really stung in a separate interview tied to the same feud. Barkley widened the comparison beyond just himself. If Golden State were relevant, he wouldn't be in the studio with me. I wouldn't trade my career for Draymond's. I'm pretty sure Karl Malone wouldn't, and I'm pretty sure Patrick Ewing wouldn't, he continued. He's had a terrific career, but to think he's on the same level as us as players, you'd have to be crazy, Barkley concluded. That's not a shot at one guy anymore. That's Barkley recruiting an entire wing of NBA royalty. Guys with MVPs, scoring titles, decades of individual dominance, and placing Draymond outside that circle entirely. No championships needed to make that argument, just resumes. Barkley also went after the Warriors' body of work directly, not just their age. The Warriors haven't been relevant for 3 or 4 years. They've been in the play-in, and when you're in the play-in, you're not in the playoffs, Barkley said. He added, the Warriors have been in the play-in for 4 straight years, so they've been irrelevant. That's the kind of comment that's hard to argue with using vibes. It's hard to argue with using pride, too. It requires actual numbers, and that's exactly what made Draymond's response so complicated. Because on paper, the Warriors' recent seasons back up almost everything Barkley said. There's also something worth noticing in how Barkley framed his own comeback. He wasn't defending himself out of hurt feelings. Multiple times, across multiple interviews, he made a point of saying he wasn't offended by any of it. The 11-time All-Star didn't seem too hurt about what went down earlier that week. He took a shot at me, but I don't get offended. I've said things about other guys. They've took personal shots at me, Barkley said. That detail changes the whole tone of the exchange. Barkley wasn't retaliating out of anger. He was correcting the record because he thought the record needed correcting. And he did it with the same tone he might use explaining a rule change or a trade rumor. Calm, certain, unbothered. It's also worth remembering what made this whole thing land so hard. Barkley has heard criticism about his Rockets years before, and he doesn't dispute it. He took a shot at me, but I don't get offended because I've said things about guys they took personal shots at me, Barkley told the Dan Patrick Show, adding, you know, it's so funny. Last time you had me on the show, I told you I regretted those Rocket years, especially the last 2 where I sucked as a player. So Barkley wasn't even denying the premise Draymond used. He just refused to let that premise be twisted into an argument about who's the better player, full stop. That distinction between roasting somebody's career choices and claiming superiority is exactly where the next part of this story lives. Because Draymond wasn't going to just sit there and let the reality check framing stand unchallenged either. Give Draymond Green credit for one thing. He doesn't run from a fight, even one he's clearly losing on paper. Within days, the criticism online had turned into a full-blown pile-on. Fans, analysts, former players, everybody had an opinion on whether Draymond had any business, comparing himself even jokingly to a Hall of Famer with an MVP trophy. So Draymond went to his own platform, The Draymond Green Show, to address it head-on. And at first, he didn't back down at all. I found that interesting because what it shows is how bad y'all want me to do bad, Draymond said. That's what it really shows, is how much y'all want to see me fall. He wasn't apologizing. He was reframing the entire controversy as proof that people were rooting against him personally, not reacting to something he actually said wrong. He kept pushing on that theme. The 36-year-old admitted he has dealt with criticism and doubts his entire life, which is why the constant attempts to tear him down no longer surprise him. Instead, he almost mocked the people rooting for his failure. I think that's amazing for everyone that does, because if you're spending time trying your hardest to make me fall, what are you doing with your life? He also tried to flip the double standard argument back on his critics. Draymond pushed back at critics defending Charles Barkley by arguing that people were setting a double standard. In his eyes, fans were saying he had no right to criticize Barkley because he was not better than him. Meanwhile, those same people freely attacked Green despite not being more successful than him either. It's a fair logical point on the surface, but it also sidesteps the actual substance of what people were upset about, which wasn't who's allowed to talk, but whether the comparison itself made any sense at all. Then, slowly, the tone shifted. Draymond started walking the comment back, not fully, but enough to notice. He explained what he says he actually meant by the Rockets' jab. The reason that I would even say that is what Chuck makes fun about in his career, is actually the last 2 years in Houston, Green said during the latest edition of the Draymond Green Show. He added that the whole thing had been blown out of proportion. Green added, "Everybody tried to make it like this whole, man, Draymond think he better than Chuck. The disrespect ain't the intent. So if that's the way, it's viewed as public disrespect. I can gladly public apologize for it." That's a real shift from, "You all just want to see me fall," to something much closer to an actual apology. And a few days after that, Draymond went further than a simple clarification. He made a direct, almost humble concession about where he actually stands compared to Barkley. "We're not on the same level. Yeah, I'm not an NBA MVP. I'm not at all," Green said, "but I hope to walk in the Hall of Fame. And if I do that, if I'm lucky enough to do that, fingers crossed, hopefully I will be, then that would stamp us on the same level." So he's right. I'm not there, and that's okay. Still constructing, still working at it, still trying to get there. That's Draymond Green on his own show, agreeing with the exact framing Barkley had used days earlier, that they're not on the same level. He also insisted repeatedly that he never claimed otherwise in the first place. "Don't lie and don't put words in my mouth," Green said. "If you want words, I always give you the words out of my mouth. At no point did I say, oh man, I'm better than Charles Barkley. Stop it." Again, to try to build it as disrespect. There's no disrespect from me to Charles Barkley. He doubled down on that same point weeks later on a completely separate appearance, still defending the intent behind the joke. "I never once said I was better than Charles Barkley," Green said, stressing that although Barkley was an all-time great, he considers himself an original. So by the time the dust settled on Draymond's side, the story had moved from defiant to defensive to something close to conciliatory. He never fully backed off the idea that the joke was misread, but he stopped fighting the premise that, career for career, trophy for trophy, he and Barkley aren't standing in the same place. And once Draymond conceded that much, the conversation shifted almost entirely onto the ground Barkley had been standing on the whole time: the Warriors themselves, and whether they're actually as finished as Barkley said on air that night. Here's the thing about Barkley's reality check. It wasn't just about hurt feelings or old guy comparisons. It was built on a stretch of Warriors basketball that's genuinely rough to look at once you line it up year by year. Golden State went 44-38 in 2022-23, grabbed the number 6 seed, then fell to the Lakers in the semifinals. That was the first crack after the title. Then it got worse. A year later, they improved to 46 wins, yet somehow slid to 10th place, where Sacramento bounced them out of the play-in before the playoffs even began. Although the 2024-25 campaign briefly revived hope with another conference semifinals appearance, the crash in 2025-26 hit hard. That's 4 straight seasons of a team that used to be a lock for the finals, instead scrapping just to see the playoffs at all, and mostly losing that fight. It's exactly the pattern Barkley pointed to when he said the Warriors have been stuck in the play-in for years running. The roster context makes it even harder to argue against. Losing Klay Thompson wasn't just a headline. It removed 1/3 of the identity that made this era of Warriors basketball what it was. Curry is now on the back half of his career, eligible for a new contract deal, but no longer the unstoppable force he was in his mid-20s, and the front office moves since haven't solved the core issue. Green acknowledged that Jimmy Butler III and Moses Moody will miss significant time, and those two players take up a bulk of the payroll. Former MVP and franchise cornerstone Stephen Curry is entering the final season of his contract. Injuries have plagued this Warriors team, and Curry was one of the victims, playing only 45 games in 2025-26. Even Draymond, in the middle of everything, couldn't fully deny where the franchise sits. He tried to reframe the goal instead of denying the decline. Green went on to say that winning a championship may not be the Warriors' definition of success. Instead, the goal is to establish a winning culture to set up championship expectations. Once Green and the other veterans leave the organization, that's a pretty significant shift in ambition for a locker room that once expected a title every single year. Meanwhile, the front office questions keep multiplying. The Warriors are at a crossroads, with Steve Kerr's future up in the air. Draymond Green could enter free agency, while Steph Curry is eligible for an extension at the age of 38. Add in speculation about roster turnover, and you get a picture of a franchise that isn't just having a bad year. It's actively deciding what its next chapter even looks like. Now flip it back to Barkley's own history, because that's the comparison Draymond tried to use against him, and it's worth actually checking the math. Barkley joined the Houston Rockets in 1996 at age 33. He averaged 16.5 points, 12.2 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and a 4.0 box plus minus throughout his 4 years with the team. Break that down season by season and it gets even more specific. In 1998-99, Charles Barkley averaged 16.1 points per game and 12.3 rebounds through 43 games. In 1999-2000, Barkley averaged 14.5 points and 10.5 rebounds with the Rockets in just 20 games. While Barkley was not the most durable player during his last years with Houston, he was still a productive player for the franchise. So the guy Draymond used as a cautionary tale was still putting up near all-star numbers into his late 30s, hampered mostly by injuries rather than a drop in skill. That's a very different story from "you don't want to look like that." And that mismatch is exactly why the stats comparison people ran online after the show cut so deep. It was a sharp decline for Barkley, and the perfect fuel for Green's jokes. What Draymond might not realize, however, is that Barkley's worst stretch is still better than anything he has put up in a single season. Of course, what ultimately sets Draymond apart from Barkley is his championship track record. That last line is really the whole tension of this entire feud in one sentence. Individually, across a full career, Barkley's peak numbers dwarf anything Draymond ever produced on a stat sheet. But Draymond has 4 championship rings and a Defensive Player of the Year award, and Barkley has neither. The comparison highlights the fundamental difference in how their careers are evaluated. While Green has 4 NBA championships and a Defensive Player of the Year award, Barkley, Malone, and Ewing built their legacies on individual dominance, with multiple All-NBA selections, MVP honors, and sustained excellence across more than a decade. 2 completely different measuring sticks. Barkley points to individual dominance, All-NBA teams, an MVP trophy that sat on his shelf since 1993. Draymond points to championship banners hanging in Chase Center. Neither one is wrong about their own resume. That's exactly why this argument was never going to end with a clean winner, and exactly why it kept going long after that first awkward silence on set. So where does all of this leave things between the two of them? Publicly, at least, it sounds like the heat has mostly cooled. Draymond made a point of saying there's no real tension behind the scenes. Green explained that in the context of the show, the analysts take jabs at each other and current NBA stars, and added that the two have a great working relationship and that there is no tension. And by most accounts, Barkley agrees. He never treated this like a war worth waging, more like a comment worth correcting once, clearly, and then moving on from, barring an absurd comment from Green in the near future. It sounds like this is all water under the bridge. But the deeper story here isn't really about whether two guys who work together are still cool. It's about what got exposed in the process. Draymond Green picked a fight over aging and decline with one of the most decorated talkers in the sport's history, on the exact show built around that kind of exchange, and found out in real time that the scoreboard doesn't care how good your comeback line sounds in the moment. Barkley didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need 3 days to think of something clever. He just stated plainly where each of them stood, and let the numbers everyone already knew do the rest of the work. For Draymond personally, the timing makes this sting a little more than it might have 5 years ago. He's not just a player defending his current form anymore. He's building a second career as a TV analyst, sitting in the exact kind of seat that Barkley has occupied for decades. Every clip like this one gets replayed as evidence for or against whether he belongs at that desk long term. And when the two men clash again, because they will, it'll happen in front of that same audience, on that same show, with that same history now sitting right underneath the surface. For the Warriors, the stakes are less about pride and more about survival. Warriors predicted to part with Draymond Green, reunite with $194 million 16-time All-Star. That's the kind of headline circulating around the franchise right now, a sign that the roster overhaul Barkley predicted on air might already be underway behind closed doors. Kerr's future is unresolved. Curry's next contract is unresolved. Draymond's own future in Golden State, by several reports, isn't guaranteed either. None of that gets settled by a TV segment or a podcast clarification. It gets settled over the next year, in games, in front offices, in decisions nobody's made public yet. What Barkley did was put a spotlight on a timeline that was already running out. Draymond just happened to be the one standing closest to the light when it hit. And maybe that's the real reality check in all of this. Not a scoreboard between two Hall of Fame caliber careers built on entirely different foundations. Not a viral clip or an awkward silence on live TV. It's a franchise, a locker room, and a group of guys who spent over a decade rewriting what a dynasty looks like. Now staring down the exact question Barkley asked out loud on air without blinking. What happens next, once the run everybody admired finally actually